Good evening, welcome to Cape Charles Town Council regular meeting December 20th, 2018. Roll call.
Buckles present.
Holloway present.
Dennis present.
Brennan present.
Roach present.
Let it be known, we've established a quorum. Everybody for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Recognition of visitors, presentations, and recognitions. Cape Charles Main Street, Inc.
Council, I just wanted to introduce you to Lee Taylor and Arnett. We've been lucky enough to have his firm, Arnett Northrow, doing the market and economic statistics for us. And then I'll let him speak to him, but I just want to give an introduction. He's worked with Main Street across the nation a lot with Virginia Main Street, so that's how we're lucky enough to find him. So I'll let him take over.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. Appreciate the opportunity to come and chat with you all. As Shelley mentioned, this is a project that we have been working on with Cape Charles Main Street. We have been doing a market study for downtown as well as the entire community. We've looked at a number of different things. So basically what I want to do is give you a quick review of the findings. This is part of a large study. This is part of a study that you're going to get in full depth with a ton of data in it as a report that's going to be coming in the next couple of weeks. So what I want to do with you right now is just hit the high notes on some of the select findings. In a short presentation that really doesn't do the data justice, but I know that you all have seen this brief summary and you may have some questions. So again, I'm just going to hit the high notes here. We started the process with an online survey. Actually, Cape Charles Main Street implemented the survey mainly at Festive Fridays. It was also done on social media. We had 141 responses. Actually, it's 145 right now, and weather permitting, they're going to do it once again this week at the festival. During the survey, 39% of the respondents were residents of the town of Cape Charles, and 54% were from the Eastern Shore. We asked a number of questions like activities, why people come here, why they're here in Cape Charles, the activities that they enjoy while they are here, asked them their favorite places that they go to and enjoy while they're here. We asked a lot of visitor-specific questions about average spending on meals and lodging and retail and all that, as well as where they lodge when they're here, as well as how long they lodge when they are here. And then, probably most importantly, we asked folks what they felt like our needs are in terms of businesses, in terms of activities, in terms of services. And some of the key findings that you'll see here. There we go. Oh. Okay. With the participants, it was split. About 35% were full-time residents, and about 35% were second home and vacationers, and the rest were other. But it was split kind of right down the middle in terms of participants. Non-residents, visitors here, come to Cape Charles about once a month during the wintertime and about once a week during the summertime. And the largest segment of folks that do come and visit here spend about 2 to 3 nights while they are here. Now, one thing about this survey and some of the other data in particular I'm going to share with you is when the survey, or if the survey was done during the peak summer season, you're going to have a little bit different data from this. And in fact, one of the deliverables of this is for us to give you all a survey that you all can deploy at various times of the year. Not only in late October, early November when we did this one, or as we've been doing this in November, December, but also maybe in January, February, in the daytime, certainly in the summertime, and different points throughout the year, so you can see how the data changes. Some of the most popular activities were dining. You've got a great dining cluster that you built here in your community, particularly downtown. Shopping and the beach. Beach was third, but I bet if we did this during the summer, folks are coming here for the most part for the beach. Some of the key business needs, grocery. 66% of the people felt like that was one of our biggest needs. All of the stakeholders that we talked to individually pretty much said the same thing. We need grocery. We need grocery options. Urgent care came up. I know that you've had some changes in the last couple of years within the region with the medical facilities that you have, and I think folks realize that and see that as something that's needed here. The next thing we did was got into the market study itself. And the first thing we did is what's called a market definition exercise. And this is really the basis for all of our market research. And the intent of this is to figure out what the true consumer trade patterns are, buying patterns are, what the true local trade geographies happen to be. And that's the foundation for us to do some of the larger market research. But we did a zip code survey with your businesses in late October. Did it for 1 week, had 11 businesses participate. During that 1 week, we had 201 unique zip codes. We had 25 states and 2 countries that were represented during that time. That's actually pretty impressive for a small town and with a small sample. 11 businesses is a relatively small sample. It definitely is not part of your peak season. When this is done again, we're going to give you all the tools to do this moving forward. In the summertime, in one of your peak seasons, you're going to see those numbers really, your visitor numbers expand. So some of the key findings there, your customer base. During this survey, 33% of customers lived in the town of Cape Charles, or actually lived in the Cape Charles zip code. That could be outside the town. 48% came from Eastern Shore zip codes. And then 34% is visitors, were visitors. Now, that number is a very high number. We don't typically see this in all the communities that we do this survey. We don't typically see 34% visitors. And again, we know that if we do this in one of your peak visitor seasons, that number is just going to grow. That's pretty impressive. Your local trade areas, your primary trade area is mainly your zip code, your Cape Charles zip code, and then your secondary trade area are the zip codes up to the north of you all. You've got an interesting geography, as you all know, being a narrow peninsula here, and certainly your trade patterns follow that. 48% of your customer base during that week came from those local trade areas, and that serves a population of about 12,000 people. And that's very important because you're a small town, 1,000 people, but your local population that you serve as your businesses in your downtown serve, it's 12,000 people, so it's much bigger than the town limits. Next thing we do is we look at retail opportunities. So we take those trade areas, and the main study we do is called a retail leakage study. And that simply compares within those trade areas what stores that exist in those trade areas are selling on an annual basis to what consumers who live in those trade areas are purchasing on an annual basis. So if consumers who live in our trade areas are purchasing more than what the stores are selling on an annual basis, that means dollars are leaking. They're going to other places. They're going to Hampton Roads, or they're going somewhere else to the north, but outside of our area. That leakage translates directly to demand and opportunity for us to grow our businesses. Here in Cape Charles, in your trade areas, your combined trade areas, you leaked about $41 million last year in all categories. Again, that translates directly to demand opportunity. If we look into some of the specifics of that, First, we do a capture scenario. You can't capture 100% of the dollars that are leaking in your community. People are going to continue to shop online, which this does account for. People are going to continue to go to other places on occasion to do certain shopping or go to other restaurants and those sorts of things. But you can recapture a certain amount that's leaving that area. through economic development, through marketing and business recruitment. And what we're showing here is you all have the potential to capture about 42,000 square feet of additional retail space in these select categories. General merchandising happens to be the largest one at about 22,000 square feet. Now, this is the Walmart type stores, the Dollar General type stores. But to give a frame of reference here, a typical Dollar General is about 10,000 to 15,000 square feet. You definitely have enough opportunity for that type of business here. That doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a dollar type store, a discount type store. Other communities that have seen this demand, they have gone out and tried to recruit independent sort of general merchandise type stores. There's a number of examples there. The next category was clothing, about 4,000 square feet. Most demand was in family and women's clothing. Those are your biggest opportunities. Sporting goods was next at just under 3,000 square feet. I think that's something that's very important here because your community, you absolutely have a great deal of outdoor recreation opportunities. You're growing some of your trail resources. You have the beach, certainly you have golf. There's demand for us to grow that category here. Furniture, home furnishings, shoes, electronic, hobby and toy stores, and a number of other different specialty categories. A couple of other opportunities that I wanted to highlight here, notable findings. Restaurants. You actually gain in restaurants. I alluded to that before. You all are bringing in customers. You built this dining destination here in your community, particularly in the downtown core, and the data showed that. Now, we did another analysis called a shares analysis, and that's basically like a location quotient study, and it compares basically individual categories to a benchmark share of all business and all retail. Your restaurants are performing well above, pretty much 3 times what your benchmark share happens to be. What that means is you all have built that cluster. But it also means that we may be gaining in that category, showing that we have enough here to support our locals, but we're doing extremely well. We're bringing people in. That's something that we may have an opportunity to grow that cluster. Either first positioning ourselves in Hampton Roads or in the larger Delmarva Peninsula as, you know what, we're your day trip destination for fine dining, or we're your evening destination for fine dining, but also to target new restaurants to bring them into the area and further grow that cluster. There's also demand for fast food actually in your trade areas. You probably don't want that in your downtown, but you are showing demand for that. Grocery, I mentioned grocery before, was mentioned as a huge need. You're actually gaining in grocery stores, about $5.9 million in your primary trade area. Now, in your trade areas, you have 2 conventional grocery stores. You have 2 food lines because your trade area does go all the way up to X more in your secondary trade area. The town itself is leaking in grocery stores, but quite frankly, most of that, if not all of that, is just going just outside the town to your existing food line that you have right here. I think that this points to a couple of potential observations about grocery stores. On the one hand, demand doesn't show enough demand for a new grocery store. But a big question here is we know we've got a great amount of short-term people who come here, either they're second homeowners or they're staying here for a week during vacation time. Well, they may be bringing their own food with them. It's probably likely that they're at least bringing some food with them. So they're not necessarily going to those grocery stores or they may be dining out. I think that really the perceived needs with grocery store is more directly related to the fact that you have a lack of choice here in the community. You don't have very many options. There is demand for certain specialty type grocery too, which is very important. So like fresh foods, meat markets, and all of that. So we may not have enough demand for conventional grocery store, but there may be opportunities for us to grow some of that specialty grocery here in the area. We looked at housing in terms of tenure, in terms of housing type, housing value. We looked at the existing market and market trends. We also looked at the housing affordability. Some of our key findings there, about 52% of the houses in Cape Charles are owner-occupied. The rest are either renter or vacant. Your median housing value is about $330,000. That's actually the highest in the entire region. And in fact, about 1 out of every 3 homes is over $500,000 in the area. Your current market, when we look at anecdotal data as well as data that we see from MLS and other services that track the market, your prices of homes here and home values themselves, asking prices and home values are increasing. Your current median asking price is about in line with what your current median value is, $330,000. But one important thing here is there's very limited new construction here in your community. Half of the listings that are on the market right now were built prior to the year 2000. While your values are increasing, according to the MLS, the days on market are actually increasing, up about 30% from the previous year. Now, this days on market is sort of the greater Cape Charles area, so it includes all the Cape Charles zip code. It's not just specifically the town limits. But that contradicts a little bit of what we heard when we were talking to some of the local realtors who said, you know what, houses are selling just like this as soon as they word's out that's for sale. And I think a lot of that has to do with maybe some of these listings that are selling like that aren't necessarily making it to the multiple listing service itself. But that was interesting to see. Short-term versus long-term residents. 48% of your housing units are not occupied, or excuse me, yes, 48% of your housing units are not full-time homeowners. They are 27% is seasonal, 13% is vacant, and then you have some that are for sale or for rent. This is from census data, ACS data. There's a certain margin of error to that, but particularly since we're 8 years removed from the census. So what we did is we got some of the town's data on utilities, and we looked at water service in particular. And we analyzed the ownership of those individual properties, and we found very similar numbers there, about 48% full-time, about 44% short-term or second home, and about 8% were locally owned homes that had a different address. So it could have been an investment property. I'm sure some of that is full-time residents as well, but it really pretty much confirms some of the data that we had showing the full-time versus part-time. And then finally, in terms of housing, apartments. That's a big thing here. That's a lot that's been discussed about the potential for rental. Do we need rental? What do we have? Affordability. We looked at the existing apartments that you have right now. About 138 units total are in apartments. You certainly have other rental properties in terms of single-family homes that are for rent. But 138 units. If you look at the fact that you have 556 occupied units in your town right now, that's a large percentage of what you have. But a lot of that is subsidized, whether it's Heritage Acres or Seabreeze. The vast majority of that is subsidized. In terms of affordability, there's not much available out there for rent. The ones that you have right now are currently being leased. There's not much on the market right now. More importantly, when you look at what we call cost burden homeowners or cost burden residents are those who pay more than 30% of their income on housing costs, whether it be rent plus utilities and all that. Within Cape Charles, it's not showing this up there, but 28% of all of your occupied housing in Cape Charles are considered cost burden. 40% of your rental occupied housing is considered cost burden. So you do have a challenge here in this community with some affordable housing. We are showing some projected growth. You've grown here sort of in the last 8 years in particular, marginally. We're projecting that to grow again. Not tremendous growth. Over the next 5 years, you may have a need for another 30 or 40 units in the community. But the real important thing from housing, the housing portion of this study is you've got rising costs and values, which is a good thing, but you also have decreasing supply. There's not a lot on the market, number one, and number two, you've got a lot of folks coming in who are either buying these as investment properties, buying these as second home, or maybe even renting them out on Airbnb and all of that. So because of that, your supply is shrinking. So the challenge that we have with affordability is further sort of enhanced by the fact that we have a shrinking supply. And then finally, we looked at demographics and a number of different indicators from growth in population to educational attainment to income levels as well. One of the key things that we also do is what's called a market segmentation study. And basically what a market segmentation study is, it's a really cool tool for us to better understand what our market is and what our consumer behaviors happen to be, and maybe even what some of our opportunities happen to be. But basically what it is it takes your existing market and it applies psychographics to that. And basically what that is it takes all of the people that live within your area and put them into different segments. And each one of those segments have different consumer behaviors. They've got different activities that they enjoy. They have different ways that they are communicated to. All of this can help inform Cape Charles Main Street or some of the individual businesses in terms of how they can reach the market. Now, that being said, keep in mind that this is just a tool. This is just a study. This is just a descriptor of the community behaviors. The segment names in particular, these are very generic. They're just meant to give us an understanding of what the market happens to be. It's not saying, you know what, this is who all of our Cape Charles people happen to be. But again, like I said, it helps us understand the better makeup of the market. Some of the categories that you'll see in there, one that's interesting, like I said, they've got some cutesy names like Mayberryville. Mayberryville, 17% of your market is the second largest of your segments. These are 55 and older people, singles or married couples with no children. They're upscale, they're higher income, they're higher education for sure. They like outdoor activities. They are a bit more on the low-tech end. They listen to news and talk shows and watch news and talk shows on TV. Again, this is simply a tool for us to understand what our market's made of, but also to look at any underrepresented segments that might be there in the market that we may want to target, or we may want to grow some activities, target for recruitment, or grow some activities here in the community. Like it might be creating more opportunities for artisans, whether it be galleries, whether it be creative education, whether it be creative businesses. Maybe it's identifying opportunities to grow those segments that enjoy sports. And again, cultivate that by developing those activities. You have so many opportunities, I think, here that are untapped to grow our outdoor recreation market. So those are some of the things that a market segmentation study may tell us. So finally, demographic findings. Basically what we see here is you're growing moderately. You're aging. You're the oldest community within this entire region. You're extremely well educated. In terms of home values, I mentioned this already, you've got the highest home values in the entire region. Now, your median household income, however, is about mid-range in the entire region. And I think that speaks directly to the full-time, part-time investment properties and those sorts of things. And this new investment that's coming here in the community. And then I just mentioned market segmentation. And basically, generally, this is saying you're generally tracking a little bit older, as far as that's concerned. So, with that, I will certainly open it up for any questions that you all may have. We also looked at employment. We also looked at, thanks to Dale, we looked at some local tax revenue trends that you all have. We're going to be looking at building permit data. We still need to get some local information on building permit data, but to track some of these trends and qualify some of the things that we may have seen in the housing study. And then I've already mentioned what we've done with the full-time and part-time residents. The last thing that will be part of the final report is we will have some general strategies for business development that we'll present as sort of the final component of that. And like I mentioned, you'll get that in the next couple of weeks. But I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have about what I've shared with you tonight.
Any questions?
Yeah. The source of data that you use, how comfortable are you? You know, we talked surveys in the beginning, but there's a lot more that you've drawn upon. You did mention census data that's 2010. So how comfortable are you with what is being presented here, even some of it may be outdated or not?
I am comfortable that the data that we're showing is the best data that we can provide, both from the census data that we have qualified with, you know, I talked about the part-time, full-time, and how we looked at that and were able to qualify. There's some other things that we're able to do that. You haven't grown that much in 8 years since the last census. So I don't think that the margin of error is quite as great as it might be in some other areas, but there is that there. Some of the other data sources that we looked at, particularly for the retail market potential, I talked about leakage, that data and a lot of our projections come from a market data source called Environics Claritas. You may be familiar with Claritas. It is a nationally used firm that's used by the Applebee's of the world and the Home Depots of the world and all that to understand market trends. And again, they have their own methodology for developing this, but we feel very comfortable and that, again, the data, the projections, the analysis we've done here is the best we can get. Now, that being said, there are some things that present some challenges with you all. I've presented the numbers that I'm most comfortable with. When we look at some of the employment numbers that you'll see in the final report, those numbers begin at the county level. So you have to kind of look at the makeup of what you have here in your community and compare that to that county level data as well. If you go back to the counties or the regions, the PDC's strategic sort of competitive assessment, if you look at the county's comp plan, the previous comp plan, I think there might be a new one that's hot off the presses right now. Both of those kind of recognize the fact that you've got some data challenges with your region. A lot of that has to do with the fact that you're rural. But to answer your question, I feel as comfortable with these numbers as possible.
When you deliver a report, are you going to provide where you've got the backup for those?
Absolutely. Everything's going to be sourced, and then when we feel there might be a need for additional explanation of some of the data, we'll absolutely have to.
Great.
Yes, sir.
Having been here 31 years, I think you've done a very good job of really pointing where we are. Because when I came here, Cape Charles was the armpit of the shore without deodorant. And everyone looked down on us. But for those of us who got here early, we did very well in buying houses and selling houses. So it's good to see it in writing.
Well, I'll tell you something too that really is a market. This is an observation of mine. As Shelley mentioned, we work all over Virginia and all across the country in small downtowns and small communities, both in the Main Street world and outside of the Main Street world. Y'all have really got something special here. I've heard that. I've heard that the residential sort of trend started maybe 20 years ago, maybe even 30 years ago. And you sort of seen that change and evolution happen. But some of your downtown trends is a lot more recent than that. I've heard a lot about the 14, 15 new businesses that have opened up in your downtown the last year or so. You had the governor come and visit you all. I've been in those businesses. I've seen your downtown. You're a small town, just 1,000 people. but you've got high-quality businesses in your community. That's pretty impressive. We don't always see that, you know, in some of the other Main Street communities we work in.
This is excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
It's gonna be helpful in so many ways.
I'm going to say,
Bingo.
Main Street updating banners.
Thank you. And I just wanted to thank you so much, Aaron Burnett. It's been a lot of work and a lot of information. Some of the follow-up that we said we're going to do, we're continuing to track on the surveys. A lot of the information came from analyzing incredibly raw data. And like we said, we're still missing some of the building permits, so we'll be finalizing those reports and sharing those with you. So thanks again.
And one other thing, we're gonna, I think, maybe two more surveys throughout the year. Like mid-year and then at the end of next year, well, I forget what we plan to do. So we plan to do a couple more surveys to balance out the differences between fall, spring, and summer. So we can get an idea of-
We did the zip code survey on purpose during what I'll say the slower piece, so we could capture, hey, what's going on as is, and then we'll layer in the visitor stuff. So it's ongoing, and we'll share certainly all the 120 slides of data when we have it finalized. I'll be short about this, I'll be really quick. I know we've taken up a lot of your time already. I just wanted to update you on where we were in the branding initiative and share some fantastic news. We have finalized the banners. And so, Andy, you'll,
I'll pass those out.
oh, you did pass those out. I did not bring a copy of every single banner in print to be cognizant of everything, but I did want to share it in an actual printed form. Keep in mind, here, I'll do my banner. How's this? Keep in mind, this is smaller than they'll actually be, and I will. I just want to make sure. For those of you in the audience, again, I just wanted to share this with you. The next step is going to be wayfinding. We're currently working on that. The other thing I wanted to say is the community has been fantastic in helping us with pictures for the banners. I just want to thank you in person. Thank you, Robert Supa, for sharing your pictures with us and letting us use those. Also, Claudette LaJoy is in the picture. I want to thank Jim Granger. He's not here for another picture. And then Ron, I think I'm going to say it wrong, so I'll apologize. Rookie, for another picture.
So he did he has the bird picture, and then Robert's picture, he and Claudette actually staged this, went down to the beach.
Which was amazing.
Did the stage shot, so we're super excited.
And these will go away with it.
So they will be on the light posts.
Okay.
Light posts. And so we're currently working on, as I like to say, the arms, because we need to get the attachment piece long, because this is way too small. We actually had a sample, you might have seen it in Strawberry Plaza to test it, and it looked like kind of a mini banner with that small arm. So we're working with Dave Father to get those arms, and then we'll get to print this.
And then these will also be used as
Advertising, yeah.
social media, so the grant that we applied for through Ribbon and Tourism, that we haven't kind of got yet, there's a whole campaign based on each of these, and so a series of kind of social media ads and boosts.
And I didn't actually call that out, I'm sorry, with the shop and the stroll, we did those very much on purpose with the categories to call out some of our base tenants that you guys have been hearing about throughout the branding process. And I will say, so many people have been involved in volunteering and giving us opinions and insight and wisdom. The town has been incredibly involved in it, and so it's really, truly a group effort. So again, I just wanted to give you a quick update and share the good news and share the banners. We'll make sure it goes out on social media later, but we wanted you to see it hot off the press. Questions?
Very good.
Very nice, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, public comment. Excuse me. We got 2 or 3. Should call you that when it's time.
Okay.
USDA grant loan application.
We don't have any comments for either the grant application or the hearing, the appeal hearing.
No comments?
No silence.
Okay. Ms. Lanning's comments?
Bob Smith.
Smith, state your name and address for record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the town council. My name is Bob Smith. My wife and I live at 3 Marks Court in Cape Charles, Virginia. On Friday, October 26th, I noticed a water leak in my meter and immediately called Public Works. They sent out workers to confirm my leak and cut off the water. I was informed that I needed to get a plumber to fix the leak because the leak was on my side of the meter. They also said my bill could be adjusted because of the leak. Being a Friday, I called several plumbers, only got voice messages. I was able to contact a plumber late Friday afternoon and said he could get out there Monday to fix the leak. I told him that I wouldn't have water for the weekend, and he also made a comment that he thought the water bill could be adjusted. So I called the public utilities back to get my water turned on so I would have water for the weekend. The worker did come to my house and cut the water back on, which I was very grateful for. He again said that my bill could be adjusted, and he also took a reading of the meter. Unfortunately, the plumber didn't come on Monday, but he did come on Tuesday, and the leak was fixed. I received my utility bill on December 3rd, and the bill was for $1,562.61. I called Public Works to see about adjusting the bill. They informed me that only the sewer portion of the bill could be adjusted, and I would have to pay the water portion of the bill per the town code. The water portion was $598.44. I'm here this evening to respectfully ask for an adjustment of the bill for the water portion as well as the sewer portion because of the following reasons. Number one, as I mentioned, with the water leak occurring on a Friday, it was virtually impossible to get a plumber out there. Number two, I feel that I was somewhat misinformed by several people, including town employees, who told me my bill would be adjusted. It did not specify that that only the sewer portion would be adjusted. If I had known only the sewer portion would be adjusted and not the water portion, I might have approached this in a different manner. Number three, I really don't understand about the code. When it was written on February 10, 2011, it only included an adjustment for sewer portion and not water. I hope possibly the council will look at this issue again, at least look at it maybe on a case-by-case basis when water leaks do occur. Also, I think it would be very beneficial to citizens if the town employees were aware of the code and informed of the code and what exactly could be adjusted on the bill. That will give the citizens a much more information so they can make an informed decision on how they would like to handle a water leak. Thank you very much for your time tonight, and I appreciate your consideration in this matter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Knight?
Good evening, Mr. Knight.
How you doing?
Good. Mr. Name
My name is William Knight. I live with my wife at 509 Ernest Loop, Cape Charles. Basically, I have some handouts I'd like to present. visited Cape Charles maybe in late 1900, 2001. And my wife and my granddaughter moved here from Connecticut about maybe 7 years ago. And when I first visited Cape Charles, there was Boys and Girls Club in operation over at the old farmer school here. But since then, it moved out of the community. But what I'd like to present to you tonight, this narrative, I'll read it to you. This narrative is presented to you for your consideration of using this tennis court as a multi-use tennis and basketball court. I realized in doing some local research, there were some incidents on the former basketball court that spurred negative thinking. However, I believe if this is done right, it will be positive for the total community. I propose that the Common Council form a committee to explore the possibilities of this venture and also to fund this project. The collaboration with Park and Recreation, the clergy, police and the fire department, and businesses will be beneficial to further promote community relationship. Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. Wentz, a good comment. There is some basketball available at the Baptist Church after that closed. Were you aware of that also?
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I also
With supervision.
I met with
Russell and Antoine.
Pastor Russell,
Okay.
and that was you told me that was not primary for the church use, but it's somewhat limited. When visitors come into the community during the summer, there are folks that like to shoot the hoop. And I encourage you to maybe do your own due diligence and do some research. There have been some real positive results in these type of facilities, especially when you collaborate with the fire department, the police department, and also Park and Recreation.
I also just wanted to comment, I don't know if anyone here has observed it, but the tennis courts are currently being used in a multi-use function, just impromptu. They're almost every night being used by soccer teams and drills and things within the tennis courts I've noticed in the last 3 weeks. So there's some things happening that are not necessarily, I don't know what that means for tennis players and all of those things, but there's young people out there, I mean, like, and I'm talking like 20, 25, 30 young people over
Yeah,
it.
that's good.
Really getting, you know, the use of that space. And it's just happened, as far as I know, just as an impromptu type of thing.
Well, I'm looking at the possibility of maybe having this more or less control and control, you know, because of some things I said before, the negative. I look at all of you, and I thank you all for your service, and I believe in all of you are authentic people. So I just want to present this to you, you know, for, I don't know what the next step might be, but I just want to present it to you and let it go on record that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Banks.
Anyone else is something?
Do you have any emails?
No, nothing submitted in mine.
Up next, the consent agenda. Under item A, new business, D, upgrade the time server, email server is an action item. I'd like to change that to an information item. If that's possible. Get a motion to.
I had a couple of comments or corrections in these minutes that I'm going to give it to Libby. Minor.
Maybe we'll do it for a second. Motion seconded for.
Okay, sure.
Discussion.
You're pulling out 7D and putting that into the action item?
No, No, that's,
But- so
seven
the-
D wasn't action item, it's just gonna be information.
Oh, okay.
It's just not pulling, it's just gonna be information.
Okay.
Can I get a motion for consent agenda?
Move.
Second.
Good discussion.
Yeah, I had two minor comments for meeting minutes that's on the,
Okay. Marty?
one, I was not at one of the council meetings, so it shows attendance for me there, so we corrected that. The other one, there was reference to an attachment in one of the meeting minutes that wasn't included in our packet here.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unfinished business, A, accessory dwelling units, utility bills.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is a follow-up to the meeting on December the 6th, where this item was discussed, and there was some recommendation for changing the language to make the process clearer as far as the reduction in rate for accessory dwelling units occupied by non-rent paying or family members, or while those units are vacant. Remember, the accessory dwelling units in Cape Charles are by way of conditional use only and by right. So this is recommended language for the town code sections of the water and sewer rates to describe the accessory dwelling units and their particular building structure separate from, all other accounts. This would be approved by adoption of the ordinance.
Can I get a motion to approve recommendations?
Make a motion to adopt the ordinance.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
The roll call be done as a roll call vote.
Got it. Roll call?
I have one piece of comment before we go. I just wanted to thank Paul for all the work he did on this. I know it took a lot of effort to come up with all of it, and then went back and redid it all after the discussion, so thanks, Paul.
Healthy discussion.
Thanks very much, Paul.
There was a time that would have been reason for you to hate me for the rest of my term.
It's still fun. Roll call.
Coach, yes.
Holloway, yes.
Dunn, yes.
Shannon, yes.
Roseman, yes.
Burgess.
Unfinished business, item B, 2019 harbor rates.
Mr. Mayor, council, this was also discussed at a recent work session or rather special meeting on December the 6th. At that time, there was some discussion about, in particular, the nightly rentals and the rate charge there. So staff went back and reworked those numbers to the numbers you've got in front of you. And I think if there's any particulars, either assistant harbor master or treasurer will get into particular details for any questions.
So there are two different options here. That's what it looks like.
I just want to point out an error before, the nightly rate, the weekly rate for the winter, instead we proposed reducing it by $1 per foot, but, on the chart, it said 425 to 425, it should have been 525 to 425. So the net decrease in revenue would only be $85 based on this fall's slip.
And that's in the first, or we get to our second chart.
The second chart. We want the harbor rate comparison with focus group recommendation on that one.
All right, so that's,
So it's just a typo. And the net reduction of revenue would have only been $85 based on this year. So at the bottom, the revenue, total increase in revenue would have been $16,229 versus what you have on yours. And that's it.
so, I mean, you guys didn't change you basically kept in summer boat length slip lengths in here. Correct?
We presented it sort of an à la carte, you can accept any of all or change them all, but it shows you the impact of those changes.
What's the third one is basically, that's where you adjust it just to nightly selling.
The first one's, the only change is the 10-cent increase in the transient package, and then the last one shows,
Where's that?
it's on the back. You've got the long one, which shows just the rates in the area and the amenities comparison.
Yeah, that's the big one.
Okay, then the next one should be the Harbor Rate Council recommendations, showing the 10-cent increase in transient. And then the last one is the recommendations from the focus group of the harbor master. And it shows the impact of the changing the slip length, as well as fuel and the storage.
Is it the third chart is just hard to follow?
Charts 2 and 3 are backwards from what Debbie just said.
Oh,
Yeah,
Oh, they are?
yeah.
Yes.
like,
I was afraid of that.
So are we looking at the second chart as what's to be approved?
I don't know, that's not.
It was hoped that, according to the staff report, that staff recommends implementing all of the changes, council recommended and the focus group and harbor master.
I'm not a big fan of that boat length in the dock length.
So we should be looking at the chart that says 16,000 or 6,000.
One, if you just,
Combination.
yeah, the combination would be 22,000, if you did all of the changes.
I got it.
Josh, you know how many of those boats that are in there, the summer season, how many of those are local? How many there's?
When you say local, do you mean immediate Cape Charles residents?
Yeah,
or-
like, out of the 20 slips that you're gonna, in the D dock, how many of those are local boats?
Now, when you say local, do you mean Virginia Beach?
No.
Do you
Cape
mean
Charles.
have a second home in Cape Charles? Or do you mean specifically live here year round?
Well, if they have a home here, they're a taxpayer of one.
Right.
Anybody that owns a house or has a house, or full-time or part-time, how many of those boats are on D dock for season?
For Cape Charles specific residents, tax-paying Cape
Yeah,
Charles.
out of the 20 slips.
I would say, without doing the research specifically,
Roughly.
maybe for the floating dock especially, roughly 25%, maybe less.
Right.
So we see,
Well, I'm getting at, I'm trying not to penalize the local people.
sure,
By changing it.
And let's get a motion on the floor, let's get a first and a second, then we'll discuss.
Like a motion to approve it?
A motion to approve it, deny it,
Approve what? That's what I want to know. What are we looking at? Which chart are we looking to approve there? The second one or the third one?
It's basically all, it's a la carte right now.
Staff recommends implementing all of the rate changes.
So slide 98, 99, if you look at that.
Okay, that's what I want to
That's what
know.
I think it's a little bit different.
So the 16,314 plus the 6,068, which is $22,000
Okay, that's what I want to know.
increase.
So we have a motion or we need a motion?
We need a motion.
Okay, I approve, make a motion that we adopt what was shown on slide 98 and 99 for rates.
Second.
any discussion?
One of the things I thought we talked about with Charlie was the nightly summer rate, and that we were down too low in comparison to, so if you look at slide 97, we looked at some of our competitors that are at $2.25, $2, and we were the lowest, or along with others that are low like that. We had recommended $1.85 or $2 was my memory. And they're still recommending $1.75, and I don't think that's a smart idea.
I would like to comment on that. If you've noticed, everything on there for the most part is on the 0 to 25 to 50 to 75.
Right.
There's nothing in there,
85.
85.
No.
Owners don't like
No.
odd numbers, they
No.
just don't. They'd rather pay more money,
Yeah.
they'd rather pay more money than something they can figure out in their head.
Right. Well, and that's just the consumer in general. I mean, that doesn't go. I would recommend the $2. I think it puts us in line with all of the others in Adcock. A little bit below Kings Creek, but there's just no reason we have quality services and none of these. There's no reason we should be going for less.
Just coming to the town, that's the remedy.
Access to the talent, you know, what we have to offer there.
So Tammy, you think that only that particular?
That's the one that stood out to me right then, is
That's
that
it.
one as a first thing.
The rationale for that for you is, let's just have rates that are more in line, comparatively speaking, with all the other marinas like ours.
Yes, and we're,
On the
you know, we're
That's what I'm
facing,
saying, like ours.
we're facing a, you
Same
know, a
market.
decrease in our revenue at the harbor. And if we're looking at ways to me, we have something to sell, we have a product, and there's no, we're selling ourselves short, I think, in that. I know it's only a quarter, but it's.
That's gonna help with the maintenance and all the other issues that are going on there.
Well, if I'm reading this right, on this chart on page 99, the 10-cent increase is the only thing that is generating a $6,068 impact. So if you raise it to $2, it would be $15,000 would be the increase.
Well, plus, if the boat length is only 25% of its transient, it's not as bad as I was thinking. I thought it was mostly locals that are gonna get penalized, but it's really not. So I don't have a problem with that. Now that I know the percent.
Yeah, I don't want us to get into the job of micromanaging what the harbor does, they do a good job. But we really did, in our work session, discuss that at length, of comparing ourselves in a competitive rate. And that was the recommendation we really went forward with. I don't remember the 185, I thought we talked about $2. And I think in the situation.
It was the example I used,
Okay.
the dime.
I think that, in where we're at with our numbers, we need to be doing anything we can to get those numbers back up to cover our costs and expenses.
The recommendation from staff also includes, maintaining the 5% discount on dockage for town residents besides, so it's even less of a concern. So if you're a number of
Right.
people, that's still
Right.
available.
Takes that little potential off.
And that was another one of our items we were going to mention. Can I amend them?
All good.
Paul can amend his motion.
All right, so that's for nightly summer to go from 175 to $2. Okay, so I so moved that we changed the nightly summer rate to $2
And approve the rest as presented.
and approve the rest of the presentments.
So I get a second on that.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed?
Give some more money for repairs.
New business, Harbor District Review Board appeal.
Mr. Mayor?
Historic District, excuse me, Historic District Review
Council, this is an appeal to the decision made of the November 20th, 2018 Historic District Review Board regular meeting, denying the removal of an existing chimney from the subject property at 408 Randolph. The contractor is here to present. Reason for the appeal, otherwise the application.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Committee, Mr. Raymond.
Good evening, everybody. So I don't know how familiar you are with it, whether you saw my appeal letter or not. The house in question has two chimneys, okay? One is a predominant architectural feature on the front left-hand side of the house. You guys should have maybe some photos and included in my appeal.
It's here.
The chimney in question to be removed is actually in the rear aspect part of the house. It's a small pole burning chimney. It's in disrepair. It's not used. The owner has plans to renovate the interior of the house in which the staff would be in the way and limit their ability to do that. They feel as though being required to keep this chimney, to restore it, is an undue hardship. It doesn't want them to do the other renovations they'd like to do. It's my opinion and the opinion of the owners that some precedents are already set of removal of these style chimneys, these unusable chimneys, including this structure that's currently standing. I do sympathize with the Architectural Review Board's desire to keep the town as architecturally correct as possible. If any builder in this town has, done his due diligence to do that to me, I don't do vinyl siding, I don't do salt treated front porches, I don't do any of that. But these chimneys all throughout town have been removed for good reason. Nothing else is safety hazards. Have any questions for me?
What was the Historic District Review Board's reason for denying this?
You have to read it. It was hard to follow.
I can speak to that.
Okay.
I'm Susan Ida, a member, and I was at that meeting. What I recall was the application was made to remove a second chimney, was integral to the floor plan renovation being proposed that was going to impact the floor plan. There was no structural engineering report that showed that it was unsafe or falling down, and the applicant had been given permission in a prior application to remove one chimney. We felt it was like a second bite at the apple, and it was more geared toward creating more space in the interior floor plan than it was any safety hazard. There was other members present that mentioned that it could be repaired, and that really it was a cost issue.
I still am not aware of the first chimney. I'm only aware of the single chimney.
That's
So
what I
you're
heard.
saying there used to be 3 chimneys on this house?
2.
There's still 2, they want
Still
to
two.
remove 1. But the reason I just heard you state was because it affected the floor plan. I didn't realize the Historic District Review Board reviewed floor plans.
Well, we're
They did
not.
the-
We review whether or not it should stay based on, is it unsafe? And does it provide a safe, does it current condition?
Well,
mean,
by
as a
code,
result
it's
of
an
safety issue,
by code,
and
it's
there
an
was-
unusable chimney. It's not usable by code.
I think we asked you at the time, could it be repaired, and the answer was yes, and that was the reason why we denied the
Fair
application.
enough, anything.
It is one of the guidelines of the review, of the Historic District Review Board to try and preserve the chimneys wherever, whenever possible, if they're not a risk to safety.
My question is, if it can be repaired, but it's not going to be used for anything, why repair it? I mean, realistically,
When we look at the historic overlay and the guidelines that we have, there is a visual, it's the same reason you wouldn't remove a porch in front of a house, or columns or something if they were still structurally sound. It's part of the historical viewscape of a home.
so in 1910, how many HVAC units was in the historic district?
Well, I agree with you.
Well, then
I agree with you, but this isn't the guidelines, and it was just consistent with the guidelines, that's all. And we're trying to have a platform of fairness where we're not, in 1 week saying yes to a chimney, this week saying no to a chimney. So this did not meet the criteria of removing a chimney in the document.
Is this an original chimney on the house?
Very likely it is.
It almost looks like it's an add-on to me.
I have no way to know. I will say that probably 99% of all houses built in that era had a chimney. Internal. And if you look at town right now, you will see that probably 50% of all houses do not have any chimneys.
Well, and that's my, and I don't know how our role goes into this, but I know that other chimneys in this same situation have come down.
And once
I
again, I
have one of
sympathize
those.
with
I
the
mean,
historical
So
aspect
I
of
don't
it.
understand.
When you pass an ordinance that says no chimneys can be removed, then people know this ahead of time. Well, it's obvious that the houses in town, like I said, 50% of the houses in town probably don't have a chimney. They would have been built with a chimney.
So I'd like to weigh in, right?
Yes, sir.
I've been attending all these meetings, so I have a good understanding of what's occurring on various issues chimneys being one, and all of a sudden, over the past year, chimneys have become a prevalent thing. So I went back and looked at my notes, and I went back to the meeting minutes to pull out discussions on chimneys. So here's my overview. My opinion that the removal of the rear chimney be granted because there's no written evaluation criteria by the Historic District Review Board or the town for making decisions on chimney removal, retention, or repair involving architectural, visibility, and structural attributes. The need for an engineer's report concerning structural nature of the chimney for removal request is unclear during the application process, and if required, what attributes are to be concluded. Rear chimneys have been approved in the last 9 months for 523 Jefferson, 653 Monroe, 206 Harbor, and 223 Monroe. So chimneys are an issue that they've been dealing with inconsistently, in my opinion, as documented in my research here. So I'm for allowing the removal of this rear chimney as it had been removed in other applications over the last 9 months. And that's not even consistent.
Can I ask a question? Did you see, when you were doing the research on those others that have been removed, what was the rationale for the removal of those?
Well, a lot of cases it came down to it's in the rear, and it come down. A lot are structural, a lot tie into the framing, a lot are, the chimney itself was unsafe. They've had 2 engineers' reports on 2 of the applications that don't speak directly to the chimney being unsafe and having to be taken down. In one case it was acknowledged, but said, oh, the applicant had told me, this is the consultant talking now, the applicant had told me it's gonna come down to the 2nd floor, so I don't have to worry about addressing it. All right, so to what degree is it unsafe? He didn't really address. And the other case was kind of similar to that. So there's so much inconsistency in here, and we have had the review board already adopt, in some cases, the removal in the rear, and in some cases deny it, and therefore the inconsistency. So based on the fact that over the past 5 months, 4 have been removed. Both, in 1 or 2 cases, both chimneys have been removed and accepted. So there's no reason that this should be denied, in my opinion.
Can I ask another question? I'm flipping through the guidelines here, trying to find that quickly. Larry, do you know where that speaks to
It's
this in the
with the
guidelines?
roof section, if I'm not mistaken. And it speaks to, as Ms. Simon pointed out, these are the guidelines, and this is not an ordinance, it's interpretive. Every building is taken on its own individual historical record. Some chimneys are integral to the historic architectural integrity of the house, some aren't. Which is the justification of not saying, having an ordinance that says thou shalt remove chimneys, or thou shalt not remove chimneys. Some chimneys are a later addition, don't contribute to the historical integrity of the building, and some chimneys are from literally day 1 construction and do contribute to the
Yeah,
historical.
that's why I asked that question as a chimney, because if you go around maybe half the houses in the town, you don't see many houses with a chimney on the outside. To me, this was an afterthought, they put it in.
That was staying.
That one's staying, it's the one in the back.
The one in the
That's
middle?
In the back.
Or this side?
Circle, no,
There are a lot of chimneys that are in the back,
No,
and are small, 16 by 16.
It's a cool chimney.
Yeah, the whole corner.
It's probably the one that was in our.
I saw that whole chimney that's all removed, but it's still in pipes downstairs.
Right, a lot take it down to the roof level and go from there.
Okay, well, here's the only guidance that I see that the guidelines say at all, okay? On page 36 of the guidelines, retain the roof types of historic buildings, whatever that is, okay, including elements such as chimneys and light wells. Retain the roof form, elements, and materials as these help to indicate style and construction. So I guess we'd have to take into consideration, does this chimney do those things? Does it take away from being able to roof form, elements of the roof? It's contained in the roof section, not chimney section particularly. And materials, does it change that roof line, that building? Now, obviously, it would change the roof line somewhat because you can see there's interior chimney, but I think we have to take it in the context of the whole.
All right, but the roof line change is based on visibility from a certain point. And the board has talked in the past, it's in the front of the house where I'm looking at the house itself. And typically, if I don't see their rear chimney, they have passed judgment that the chimneys can be taken down.
I'm not being argumentative, I'm just trying to see what exactly the guidance is that we're supposed to be considering this from.
And I think that's where Paul points out is the inconsistency and
Correct.
that the historic review board needs guidance in some specifics.
Right, and when we get to the end of the meeting, we go through comments.
Right.
That's one thing I'm going to discuss is
Right.
what's needed in
But
this.
I think that, following and consistency with what's been done, I did that same research. We personally, at our house, had a rear chimney removed because it was cracked and it structurally was going to come down, but we have a structural engineer. We went through the process, but just before us, like 6 months before, something had been denied and appealed. And we moved forward at that time. So there's some history of obviously some challenges with consistency on what to do with chimneys. We probably could have gotten a structural engineer, that's what we needed to prove that it was gonna, it was unsafe and it was non-functional. But we didn't need to. So, I think that what Sean's asking is that there needs to be specifics so that people coming forward know what the rules are on those particular areas. Is it time for the chimney discussion to be outside of the roof and then just a section on chimneys, if that's our issue? I don't know.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Historic District Review Board, like any historical or architectural review board of historic district, really has parameters that have already been established. So to say that there needs to be a town ordinance citing specific criteria for anything
No, that's
works.
not.
I understand, but it sounds like they're going in that direction. And that takes away from even what the intention of the standards are from the Secretary of the Interior, which are standards, not laws. This is where it becomes the interpretive art side as opposed to the hard science side. There's an engineering report that speaks of lack of structural integrity. That's what you got.
Right.
Absent that, it becomes whether any of the features of the building contribute to the historical integrity of the building. Around Cape Charles, a very basic example of that is enclosed front porches. If you look at our guidelines and if you look at the 1996 preservation plan, Cape Charles is supposed to have open front porches. In the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, a lot of people enclosed their porches. Well, guess what? Those enclosed porches have now become part of the historical integrity of that house. So if a house has had an enclosed porch, the historical review board did this, was it 408 Bay Avenue, the house that was renovated up there, the blue house. They had that enclosed front porch that basically functioned as a sunroom. Strictly speaking, that enclosure never should have happened. Since it did, that became part of the historical integrity of that building. So when they asked to have that enclosed porch remain a sunroom, the historical record of that house was yes. If a new construction comes by and says, we'd like to enclose our front porch as a sunroom, the Historic District Review Board has kind of got no choice but to say no. And that's not because, applicant A gets treated one way and applicant B is treated another way. It's the historical record of that particular building requires the treatment of that historical building differently than it would under construction. So,
I think the point I was trying to make is that if a structural engineer's report is required, then we need to state that it's required and what that means.
And the attributes within the report.
Right, like what does that mean? Because that seems to be the consistent thing that's coming up, is that if I'm going forward and applying, and this would help the historic district review boards with some consistency, so they know, well, we need this in order to do this. It just seems very ambiguous as far
Okay, but at
as.
the same time, then we're essentially agreeing that if they bring an engineer's report that shows structural deterioration, we're gonna allow that chimney to come down. That's what you're leading to, as opposed to no taking impact of, well, repair it then. I'm sorry, it's a cost to you, but we're gonna have you repair it.
I think I'm referring to more, we can't reference it unless we're requiring it, you know, because what's being said right now is that, well, do you have a structural engineer's report? Well, what is that? Well, yeah, maybe, you know, like, what do they know? You know, like, what does that mean? If you have it, then this, or it's a requirement of the application, I don't know. But we can't ask an applicant to, you know, produce that if we don't know what we're doing with it, if there's not a purpose to it.
Here's my, and my biggest thing I'm having a hard time with is 1900 and 1910. Everybody had wood stoves, everybody had chimneys, they used these chimneys. And they had fans in their windows. And that's just the way it was. They needed those chimneys. I don't really think it's necessary to keep something if they can't use it. If they're not going to use it, I mean, it's just taking up wasted space. I understand the look and preserve the look.
Mr. Mayor, with all due respect to you, that's sort of 100% contrary to having a historic preservation.
I know that. I agree with that. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I'm just saying I get the pitch roof and I get to keep the wooden siding, not do the vinyl siding, but I have a room in my house, everything in my house is used. And if it's not used, then I got no use for it. That's just the way it is.
Well, the chimney that went by house in 407 is used for venting, because it used to be a coal-fired chimney in the day, but it got repurposed for a gas furnace. That's what it's used for. But this, you're talking about 6 feet of block. I mean, I don't understand how, especially it's in the back of the house, there's a vacant lot right next to it. Who knows something's going to be built there? The other lot, you can't see it from the west side looking east, you can't see the chimney. So if a house got built there, you're probably not going to see it except for, you wouldn't see it because the other chimney is in the way. So I don't know how it's going to change the sight line of the chimney, the roof line. I don't see how it does it. Now the outside, the thing that's hanging behind it, I wish that would go away because that's the other thing you have to test. That's the firehouse kitchen chimney.
Add something. I think able to find where the Historic District Review Board has to consider or needs to consider a particular view shed, a point of perspective for a view shed. It might be here, but I haven't found it, so if you know that. That would be an important thing to me for them to, I mean, if you can't see it, it's okay, idea, okay, but I don't really see that in the guidelines, so I don't think.
They don't have it. Because I took issue with them 2 or 3 meetings ago relative to where do I need to stand in order to determine.
So that, I don't think we can look at that as a criteria in this field. And the second thing, as tough as this is to swallow, okay, whether they're needed, whether they're in disrepair, and those sorts of things, unless it's a safety issue, I think, it is also not relevant to the Historic District Review Board or guidelines. Okay? It's important, I'm not saying that at all, but it's not relevant to the criteria to make that decision. Just as what that homeowner wants to do inside their house has nothing to do with us and nothing to do with the Historic District Review Board. So that it could be impediment for interior design is important to a homeowner, but it's not anything the Historic District Review Board should be looking at or considering, my opinion. To be honest with you, it does bother me that some, as you're saying, Paul, you know, sometimes you get to remove it, but sometimes you don't, and I'm not sure what in the world you could build that decision on.
That's why I'm saying they need to develop criteria, not ordinance, criteria for evaluation as how they're going to address that. One of the applicants had asked for this.
Well, if you look at this house in particular, you've got an impact chimney that, you know, well, I thought it was one, but that's an impact chimney. It's got more, it's a chimney that's a functioning fireplace. Yeah,
Picture.
So,
653 on Monroe. Fig, you can see certainly the front chimney from Monroe, and you can see the two chimneys from Fig. The board allowed them to take the rear chimney down. The front had some architectural feature to it, so it was to be retained. A meeting or two later, it came in with a structural engineering report that really didn't address, other than saying it's leaning and it was internally braced. And the board allowed them to take that chimney down. That's what I'm saying is inconsistency, and I'm for taking this particular case to task on allowing the chimney in the rear to come down.
I'd like to go back to the guidelines and say, we only have what this language is to consider, notwithstanding previous decisions or nothing. Okay?
Well, why can't we base it on previous decisions and the consistency?
Well,
Because also, if you look at those historic guidelines, they call for all sorts of things like wood sidings and brick front steps, and that's.
I'm saying from the appeal standpoint, because those decisions are historic district review board decisions, not those that are dealing with us, we've got to have some findings, I think. So I'm saying, this has to retain the roof form, the elements, and the roof type, okay? Look at this picture. The roof form doesn't change, right? The elements of it, the materials don't change, right? The removal of this one that's circled does not, to me, exactly seem to impact the style of the building in any way. So the only thing here is just, it says retain things such as chimneys and light wells, as an example, right?
So did the Historic District Review Board state that they thought this was part of the character of the house? Is that the reason for wanting to keep it?
I don't know, I have to go back to the minutes to see.
If I may,
The minutes don't explain, it just says,
You have to listen to the audio.
if I may, the Town of Cape Charles zoning ordinance Article 3, Section 3.6 reads as follows. The statement of intent of the zoning district is to preserve and enhance the traditional mixed-use urban nature of Cape Charles commercial districts, to encourage the location of regional and local businesses and professional activities, and to facilitate the development of buildings in keeping with its largely national historic character and designation, to protect against destruction of or undesirable encroachment of those areas. The entire purpose of having a historic overlay is because zoning ordinances that are good for the whole town are not always necessarily good for a historic district. That's the reason for having an overlay.
I don't think anybody's
I
arguing.
agree, there's been a mixed history of
Sorry,
yes, this can
let me
stay
see
and yes,
for
this can go. May I finish?
we have to.
Thank you for your consideration.
There has been a mixed history, but because the town, partly because the town has gone through phases of development in which there was a time in history when we were grateful somebody would take a house and fix it up in any way that made it usable again. I would disagree that a historic chimney that you can see from the street is not useful. Historic elements are useful. They give a nod to our history and why we have a historic preservation overlay in the first place. Every time we diminish a historic property and make it not relevant, we're sliding the scale down from having a greater proportion of historic homes to having new homes and modified homes and renovated homes that are not necessarily historic. There is use and there is value to the visually and historically accurate beauty in the view shed, as you say. It's not up for us to say, is it useful or is it not useful? It's a historic element. We're a town with a historic overlay. Those are most likely hand-baked bricks. They were hand-pointed. Those are not things that can be replicated again in the same manner. It's part of our history like the other parts of our history. And in an overlay, we need to have an agreement with our town, with planning and ordinances, that in the overlay district, we need to back each other up. we do need to have this cooperation, this handshake of an appreciation for the history. Thank you.
Probably the most important thing we got to do, at least for the future, is really come up with a good chimney ordinance.
Not the ordinance.
Okay.
Or specific guidance.
More specific guidelines, because so many chimneys have come down or been enclosed, and
Oh, it's just like Donald said, half the town's alive.
All right, but it goes as far as Peach Street having a chimney come down without a permit. The decision being, okay, so what is the town gonna require of that? Another house having a chimney blown down, you know, from the storm. What is the town gonna require of that? Very unclear as to what our direction is in those particular cases.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, in 2006, when I rebuilt my house on Peach Street, it was what I was told was a non-impact house in town. It was an old rental house built in the 50s, and it had a chimney similar to that running right through the roof, and the leak, like I said, is not repair. I made, town said, go ahead and take it down. Because it wasn't an impact house. So I had no problem back in 2005 doing it. And now all of a sudden, it's a lot of the houses have been changed over the years. And modified internally, externally. If you look at half the towns, they've got vinyl siding on them. And it's in our ordinance that with a consistent material, with modern, whatever the terminology was, modern building materials. And it's still there, and it still can be used.
But the key difference in your situation was that it was a non-contributing structure in the historic district.
Nowadays,
Right.
it is now.
Well, we haven't decided, have we?
No, yeah, but they say it is now. If I
Well,
were to do
I
that
can
now,
understand
they would know.
that it could be considered, it hasn't been designated as one.
I think it has been.
At 50 years old, it becomes.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
we don't have a new
contribute-
survey that
contributing
shows what all those are, though, do we?
Almost the whole town.
Oh, well, most, yeah, sure. I mean, ranch houses are now, think about it. Okay. Okay.
Do we have a motion?
We don't have anything.
All right, let me put a motion on the table. I move that we allow the removal of the rear chimney on 408 Randall.
Second.
All in
Wait a
favor?
minute.
More discussion?
Personally, I do not think that this chimney contributes to the historic significance of this home. However, the whole reason of having a historic district review board is to have a group of folks that are willing to do this and to take it on and to study it and to debate it and to make a recommendation on what's going to make the town better. So I stand by the historic district review board's decision.
Any more discussion?
Well, I really think we have to consider, because it's an appeal, okay, any newer evidence, if we don't have any, okay, it's kind of, what the actual guidance says. Is it detrimental to this language right here, retaining the reformed elements and materials, as these help to indicate style and construction of the building? There are two chimneys here. The first one is very prominent, or I'll say first the one closer to the front of the house, very prominent, and a defining element outside and past the roof line. The second one less so. It doesn't say that's not contributing, I mean, I won't say that, but less so. It'll be a very hard decision, and I do think that we do owe respect and appreciation of the historic district review board, Steve, and I'm good with that one. But I'm conflicted, to be honest with you.
Well, there definitely needs to be some additional guidance put forth so that we don't continue to have this issue, because as homes continue to be renovated, people are looking for more open space inside, and they're going to want to take these things out so that they can better utilize the interior of these homes.
Well, and I also think as we have new members to different boards, and we talked about this, the training and acclimation of those individuals needs to be consistent. And I think that is hard when, you know, as there's the people who made those decisions before are not on the board any longer. The consistency in how decisions are made isn't there. And I think they're doing the best that they're able to do what's given forth to them and what their charge is. But there may have been people prior to them that were, you know, made different decisions at per case basis.
I got a motion, and I got a second. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye.
How many is that?
Yeah, let me see.
How many?
Just
Andy and Paul, I don't know what,
Go take it.
All opposed?
No.
No.
Don't take it.
Papers up there, Phil's, Monaco,
declined.
Declined,
I don't know which one.
Those declined. So, I would like to say, Steve made a very good point, and I appreciate that point, as much as, I'm rather wrong about the,
I agree.
we have boards and commissions, and we do have to rely on their students, and if there's, like they do, if there's different areas that we just each week a little bit within them, their decision making, I think we need to, give them guidance on doing that, so, but.
Well, I'd like to know the next time Jimmy comes up and they approve it to be removed. I really would.
Well, what you're setting is a pattern here of telling the historic board we're standing behind them right now, so it won't be removed. I don't care if the thing is crumbling down,
No.
you're gonna find out that's gonna be the case.
The
So
Historic
that's the
District
message
Review
that we're
Board takes
giving.
into consideration the safety of the chimney too.
All right, let's move on. Item B, sale of tax parcels A3-A-12, A3-A3-A-17.
Mayor, members of council, this is, for the sale of lots, owned by the town of St. Charles. This is pursuant to, ordinance that was passed back in 2011, which, triggers.
Can't hear you.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is a sale of the lot 17 and 12 and 17, which are town-owned properties pursuant to the ordinance, pursuant to the ordinance that was adopted in August, or rather April 2011, which allows for the sale of these lots under certain criteria. That criteria has been met. The current lease tenant provided an appraisal, professional appraisal of the two parcels. The respective appraisal amounts were found acceptable to the town, and now this is the fulfillment of that ordinance which, from 2011, which allows the sale of those lots.
Mayor, I'd like to ask for recusal on this item, because I had to recuse myself earlier, and then I'll be abstaining.
I don't understand that. I get a motion or recommendation to consider the tax resolution.
Second.
I call for a roll call vote to adopt said resolution 2018.
Let me ask a question first.
Yeah.
There was some comments here that said, Mayor, town manager, to take action necessary to complete the sale of these parcels, including negotiating utility easements. I don't see anything in there relative to utility easements, so how does that, if we adopt this, what happens there?
If I could speak to that, address the town council, I'm Bert Turner, I represent the purchaser side board investors, and this was, goes back so far because it was an option to contain a lease that was led in 2011. There are utility easements. There used to be the water treatment plant on this, so there are pipes underground, and we had a surveyor go out and lay these easements out, so there's no disagreement between the parties. In fact, I guess it was about a year ago, we agreed on a plat to show where these easements would be, and the intention is when the sale goes through, the town will retain these
Okay,
easements.
that's
that
what
they
I'm
need.
looking for. Okay.
Thank you. Any more discussion? You get a roll call vote? Andy?
This is the one that was adopted prior, right? The prior mayor, is this or is this a new, is anything changed in this?
Resolution's new.
The resolution, it's just a new resolution?
This is a new resolution.
All right, resolution.
New prices and
All
stuff,
right.
the appraisal and stuff.
All right, Buckles, yes.
Holloway, yes.
Bennett, yes.
And yes.
Grossman, yes.
Burge abstain.
Let me know it's unanimous.
So,
Sold. Item C, petroleum service contract award.
Council, the petroleum services extension expired on November 30th. So the town put out a bid for petroleum services, including diesel and 89 fuel as well as propane. We had two bidders. One bidder didn't complete bids on two of the items that were bid out. So in a sense, the only completely responsive bidder was PECO. And the recommendation is to award the contract to PECO.
Can I get a motion to authorize the town manager to execute the fuel services contract for all fuel products with that company?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Item D, information only, upgrading the tank email server.
Mr. Mayor, this is, council, this is an informational report at this point because there actually was budgeted $4,000 in this fiscal year for the possible, your words, not mine, upgrade to the email system. So we've got a price here that is within that $4,000 approved range. In addition, $35,000 is currently allocated for facility and utility rate studies. Utility rate studies being done in-house. Facility studies over the past in Cape Charles have been very nice documents that are sat on a shelf. So actually, staff will be coming during the mid-year budget adjustment to request that some of that money be moved from facility studies into actual projects, whether it be IT or otherwise. So there is money budgeted to cover this expenditure. And that's really doesn't require any council action at this time.
Anybody have any questions on that? Mr. Town Manager, do you have any comments?
Two comments briefly. First, on Wednesday, the 12th of December, I met with the library board, so I want to thank them for the invitation and the opportunity to discuss some matters about the library programs and outreach, as well as the building. 2019 is the library's centennial, and there is a calendar of events celebrating that centennial posted in the current December 14th issue of the Gazette, pages 5 and 6. Also, yesterday, the town posted on the website, we'll be also running an article in the January Gazette about the Coast Guard notice and call for comments on proposed changes to the numbering, naming, location, and position, and operation of certain lights and buoys, which are also known as aids to navigation. So comments should be sent to the Coast Guard by the 4th of February 2019. Otherwise, Merry Christmas, one and all.
Mayor and council comments, I'll save mine for last. Start with you, Councilman Butler.
I have a couple of things tonight. First of all, the Gazette is great this month. It was such an enjoyable read and see pictures of everything. Great job, Libby. It's really done well. I just wanted to give a congratulations to the Business Association for 4 successful Festival Fridays and hopefully wrapping that up with the 5th tomorrow night. We've had a real influx of people. The restaurants have been full. The Main Street took on organizing the Santa House and an information booth this year, and that's turned out to be really successful, a place for people to go to kind of find out where entertainers are, schedule of events, and made all the arrangements. I just wanted to clarify, because in the Public Works summary, it states that the Public Works moved the Santa House, and actually Main Street made those arrangements this year. Public Works assisted, as did the police, in making that happen, but it was quite an effort to get that taken care of, as well as a pickup date for it to be removed next Friday. So the town's been certainly very, very helpful with that, but Shelley, as our program manager for Main Street, not only negotiated it, but we're paying for that to be moved and delivered. So it was quite an effort to do that, but one that was planned as opposed to where we were last year in the continuing Santa House. So a lot of volunteers have worked those nights, and if you were out and about tomorrow night, please stop by and thank them for their efforts. And I think it's like a lot of things as we're working on Main Street, the relationship with the town and working together and getting those things done are tremendous, and it's just working really well. One last update, Andy and I were actually at we've been trying to get the restaurants together as a group, and we got them successfully under John Dunster's leadership together, all in one place for a meeting, and it was great. There was probably 20, all of them were just about were there and represented, and they talked about things like, workforce issues, ways they can work together, ideas for slow season and different ways to do that. It's just really nice to see them coming together as a group. The one thing that came out of it that we're really excited about is that they're hoping to do our first Cape Charles Restaurant Week in March. And so stay tuned for that. But wanted to pass that along. It's just really nice to see them working together. And then I just had a general question. How do we move forward on public comments like Mr. Smith's and Mr. Knight's? What's the protocol? Like when they stand up there and speak and give important comments, what's our action? I'm still a newbie here. I don't understand how that works.
I would think in Mr. Smith's case, he's asking for something above and beyond the powers that the professional staff has,
right,
which is more or less a process that we would have to come back to us, whether it's a work session or a special meeting or whatever, and you guys can be able to require the additional refund or money knocked off of the water rate.
Right.
Say,
how does that action happen? How do we say we want? But do we say that we'd like Larry to put something together for that? Like how?
yes.
What's the step? I don't know what the steps are. Like I'm trying to, just so it just doesn't hang out there and.
No, I agree.
Okay.
So I think he was asking for that.
Yes.
So I think the next step is to
Okay.
bring it to council.
It's been hanging out there for 5 years.
Yes.
At least 5 years.
At least.
And nobody wants a basketball court next to them,
Oh,
even
we're
the Trappist
I was
Marks.
looking,
Different things, two different.
Yeah, we're talking about the water thing,
Oh, okay.
the water rate. Basketball,
Sorry, Mr. Smith.
he's requested a subcommittee to look at the feasibility. So that's something that we will probably discuss in the work session or
Okay.
something like that.
Okay, they were comments that were, to me, actionable kind of items, and I just wanted to figure out what our steps were. That's it.
So I'd like to congratulate Tracy on her certification. I think Larry's email indicated that she was the third person in Eastern Shore history to become certified, and 2 of the 3 are right here in Cape Charles right now. It's pretty phenomenal. So
The first one was the former clerk in Cape Charles.
And the other thing is just something I'd like to pass on. Last Saturday, my family and I were at Arlington Cemetery with the Wreaths Across America organization. It was a day much like today, raining very, very hard, off and on. And there were thousands of people there. And we placed wreaths on the graves in the cemetery, over 200,000 grave sites in that cemetery. And in a period of about 3 hours, each one had a real live wreath with a red ribbon on it, properly placed. Whoever's grave it was honored. Their name was spoken out loud, and they were honored for their service. It was an incredibly moving experience. The mayor was there with his family as well, and he may have some more words on that. But they said last year there was nicer weather. There was 70,000 people that came, so there was tens of thousands of people out in the weather placing wreaths and standing in line to get them from the trucks that were around the cemetery. And they do it all across. They placed 1.7 million wreaths this year, and it's been extended even to some of the American cemeteries overseas. Having lived overseas and seen the Normandy Cemetery and a number of them in Belgium, it's pretty impressive. So I would just encourage anyone that has, whether you thought about it or not, it's an awesome thing to do. And you have to sign up, but anybody can show up. So it's a lot of people, and it was very moving.
I would say, I think tonight with the chimney is, it's not a nice thing to have to do. It took, I don't know how many years to get historic ordinances, get it declared the historic district. We had 2 meetings in the fire station with 200 people screaming, a featured mayor screaming, this isn't the United States of Russia. And we're trying to keep the integrity of the town together. I really think it's important. But it's hard. When people say it's going to be expensive, it's going to be that, your heart goes out to them. But the stand up behind the review board, I think is fantastic. It really is. But it's not nice. And back to the basketball courts. A group of Trappist monks playing basketball but don't speak. Vile little words would come out of their mouths during basketball. I don't want one next to it.
you do topic on lightning involved. Yeah, I want to pick up on the chimney situation, because it's not so much standing up. If there's somebody that's been supporting historic, I've been at their meetings consistently and offering information at the end, typically dealing with inconsistency on what I see being applied. So as a follow-up to this discussion on chimneys, what I would like to do is propose a motion that the Historic Review Board come back with criteria for evaluating chimneys and bring it to us in let's say, a March work session, so we can get on the same page with them and move on. Yeah, it's just whatever they use for review purposes. Right now, when you talk about looking at various aspects, you should be able to see what your review guidelines are for variances, for instance. Well, what's the review guidelines relative to the Historic Review Board, and in particular chimneys in this particular case. The only thing I get so frustrated with is the inconsistency in the application. If they would write it down, that would go away. And we can pick the next subject, which is vinyl siding. But in any case, let's start with chimneys and go with it there. So I don't know if we want to entertain a motion to direct them.
I don't think we can.
Why not?
We would have to put it in the, as something on the agenda for next.
I'm fine with that. I'll propose words that can go into an agenda item, and then we can talk.
Well, they can just ask Larry to take
Yeah,
that.
Larry.
Okay, then that's fine. I think that's fine.
Can we also, though, we talked about this informally at one of our work sessions, look at having a council representative for the Historic Review Board. I don't understand why, I've always brought up why we don't have that. We have it on many of the others, but we don't have someone. And I think that could help as our, kind of you're bringing that now, make them sure able to go and be there. But I think that that's really important. If we're saying it's that important, then we need to show them that support.
Okay, and the second thing I had was to follow up on Festa Friday. With regards to the library, the outreach during Festa Friday has been excellent. If you look at the numbers of people, first week was 50, 90, 230, and 90 last week with the rain. So the amount of people that they're drawing with their particular activities is phenomenal. So friends of the library board, Jen, the library staff, Ann, Sharon, and Bobby should be all thanked for what they are providing as far as a service to the town community. That's all I have.
I have a few things to bring up. One is, I would certainly echo everything about the library and Festive Fridays in general, so I don't need to say all that again, except to say it's really wonderful. Everybody working together, and very impressed with what's happening at the library, so I'll pop my head in there to see. With regard to the water leak policy, as Mr. Smith was mentioning that, I was pulling up our code section, and I see that that was changed in 2011 to only apply to the sewer portion. And I know that's not always been true. I don't know what the impetus was for the change in that. Maybe some of the rest of you would know. But the ability to make an administrative adjustment, which one could do in the sewer side here, I don't really get the difference about. Of course, the sewage is not treating it.
That's right, that's the difference. It's not going through the sewage treatment
Right.
plant, and the
Which
water
is not
is
really
being produced.
Which is sort of just an adjustment in principle. It's not really.
Right, and it's an
So-
obvious reason for adjusting the sewer bill, because there was no sewer associated
Exactly,
with
so
the leak.
that's, sort of a construct. Well, so I would like to see us open up a discussion about that again and see, with more discussion. And so that would be, a legislative action that we would need to do if we were going to change that or adjust that or not anything else. So if we could put that on a future agenda or work session, as you all already mentioned, I would support that. The second thing related to basketball and all that is I'm not thrilled about the tennis courts used for other purposes. It damages the tennis court surfaces and things like that. I don't think that's a good practice. I don't think it's a good thing that we should turn our heads and just ignore. So whoever takes a look at that. So Jimmy, I'm with you, like on basketball and the use of resources and things like that, we need to be paying attention. And as the basketball, I can speak for the things at the church. The reason that was there is to supervise only part of the time available, better than nothing, sort of an end. But we have a rec director, maybe we could first ask her to sort of analyze what's available, what's used, not used.
What the need is.
And
Exactly, I'm not.
I brought up that other group. I worry for the residents on both sides because it's loud. I can hear it at our house.
It is.
Across the park. So there, I mean, it's being used now just as a pickup thing, but there's no time limit or anything like that, so it goes pretty late.
Do we have a time, do we have a time limit, like 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock or something?
I mean,
We no longer have curfew for adults.
Our curfews for under 18.
Now, they do at the church. The lights, I think they have lights and the lights go out at a particular time now. Sometimes mill around, because I live right across and I can hear what's going on. I'm not opposed to what's going on, but,
I think there's just a matter of time before we're gonna receive a lot of complaints, and I don't know what the policies are, so I don't know, I don't know where that puts Jimmy and his team to enforce anything, because what is there?
The issue, I mean, I don't know if anybody was sitting on, we had them, but the issue was people couldn't play tennis with their kids because all the costume training for basketball. There wasn't nobody in it playing basketball that lived in Cape Charles. It was all the mess from the other side of the light coming in here, no kids, they wouldn't let kids on the court. It was just a mess. And I called Sambo several times to let me put a chain on that thing and snatch them down to my truck. It was just non-stop. I don't know how you can fix that.
The third thing I wanted to mention was, and maybe this is just a question to Larry. We approved conditional use permits in the consent agenda. And I was thinking that we needed to take official action on those. Is that not true? I mean, we took action to approve them in the body of everything else. I just wanted to make sure everybody was paying attention that we did that. Two of them. Okay, so if you weren't, we weren't reading our.
Would you like for me to read all the consent agenda items, right?
No, it's our responsibility to do that. I think just when, I'm only pointing that out as a planning and zoning thing, different than all the other standardized reports. Those are unique things. And
Right.
my personal preference would be that those are action items independent.
I would like it too.
Okay?
Right, I mean, those particular items, I think why it went by me is that we've heard them so many times
I realize that.
along the way, but I think you're,
But we do
you know,
need to take action.
like officially, all the other times we just heard them, we haven't acted.
And then my last thing was, I already said that I'm conflicted about those guidelines too, but I went back and did a lot of research about how that stuff got in place and the guidelines and so forth. And the Historic District Review Board will have it's a different and unique structure house issue every single time. Every single time. We can look at the picture of the one tonight in the back chimney doesn't really change everything. And this, to explain why I voted that, didn't really change the rough line that stick up in the back. Might not even have been noticeable to many people, whereas within the chimney on the outside and the front would have been more noticeable, so on. But we really do need to support the boards and commissions, but we need to also make sure that they're doing the best they can and that they have objective criteria for every decision and not, views and feelings and ideas that we need to help make that as standardized as possible to the extent it can be. It cannot be every single house being something different. It cannot. And the other thing related to that, Andy, I'm glad you brought this up earlier, was we do need, if we update our preservation plan, which Larry has suggested, we do need to update the survey of the contributing structures in this town that apply and make sure before we move forward that we're not just making some, oh yeah, well they've been around for X number of years, but make that just as formal as that first group of structures, houses, commercial buildings, when they were identified as contributing structures. So if we're going to treat everybody the same, let's make sure that we have a good solid survey that's got every contributing structure in it.
Yeah, because who knows, especially if they do update this, the historic guidelines, there could be changes in there that we don't know about, or something, exactly what we just went through.
Well, the guidelines are referred to in the overlay ordinance, okay? As their tool, okay? We talked about this, it's not an ordinance in and of itself, it's their tool. But I agree with you, Paul, I mean, that tool needs some refinement. It's been in place since 2001, I think, or
Well, it was
two.
revised 2 years ago.
Huh?
Whole guidelines were revised 2 years ago.
They've been revised, but that part haven't yet.
The Historic District Review Board, with all due respect, spent about 2 years,
Yeah.
month by month, revising the guidelines.
Yeah.
And the guidelines are guidelines. I mean, I don't, you know,
That's
mandatory
right.
comments are over. I can bring this to staff
Right.
report on January 3rd, which I'm happy to do.
Yeah, and they are, so to the extent that we can help them by having some standardization or some refinement of some of those areas is fine. That's why I made the precedent comment before, because we can't go back and fix everything that was done right or wrong, whatever. We can only do the best we can going forward, and to the extent we are fair and equitable in a lot of these decisions, that we have guidelines to look at as well, because we gotta look at the same ones they had, plus any other evidence that comes before us on these appeals. That's my just things.
Can I just ask one question regarding that? How are our boards kind of trained and acclimated with, because one of the things in this last meeting with the Historic Review Board, they were taking into account members who were not present and their opinions on vinyl siding or whatever it might be, as if they were there voting.
But like anything else, they take it as written comments, but it's not as though those people vote. In some of these odd cases that we've talked about, they've only had 3 people, and a different set of 3 people making different decisions. Okay, so when they get a full board, it's a different mix
Yes.
and outcome than these particular.
This last time though, in particular, if you watch the video, was the people who were absent were, their opinion on certain items that they always represent were being represented as if they were there. You know, are they going into the same kind of conditions that we came up with, where as far as absence, you know, you can call in or whatever, I forget what that, like, you know, it doesn't.
No, but that would be no different from us responding by email to Libby to say on a particular agenda item not here.
Yeah, but it wasn't on a particular agenda item. It was their philosophy on vinyl siding, their philosophy on chimneys. It wasn't specifically, there was somebody who wrote it, you know, wrote in that said, this is my response to the 3 applicants.
Right.
And it was more, this person doesn't believe, you know, if you watch the video, it's pretty clear.
Yeah.
And it just was concerning to me, because I don't think that.
But technically, Tammy, that's no different than somebody just talking to one of the board members and, you know, bending their ear about their viewpoints on pick something, pick something.
Oh, I have it in planning all the time.
I agree, but it sounded very much like it was an influencer in the decision making.
Okay.
I mean, if you listen to it, that's what it sounded like to me, and it just,
I listen.
I don't think that's good.
In days of old, we used to have 2 committees, 2 council people on them. And we were told that we had to have minutes, like the meeting you had with the restaurant, to do a set of minutes from that meeting and submit. You remember that?
Oh, yeah, because you and Mary Harris is one thing.
Yeah. Takes the fun out of it.
Well, I thought it was 3 people, it couldn't be 3 people. I remember the 2
It
things.
depends on the number of people on the committee.
Yes. It wasn't a committee.
We were invited.
We were invited,
Yes.
not as, I was invited as Main Street, he was invited as town council. They don't have any. We just shifted who we were and at different times, answered different questions. Exactly.
I got a couple things, a couple comments. So one of the, I had a visitor at my mayor's office hours, and the concern was the keep of public properties and how they're being maintained. example, tennis court lights, been broke off for a year and a half, just $900 grand. This is what I had to look. He mentioned it to, Public Works guys, still waiting on the grant. I showed him that, part of our, strategy sessions and stuff is that we were working on. Other areas was boards on the fishing pier and the crosswalks and stuff, so, I think, he left, somewhat, I don't know if I'm gonna say happy, but he left, feeling a little bit better that we were knowledgeable of some of the things that's going on. It's being tended to. I want to touch on a little bit, just a second, about Steve's comment about the laying of Breeze Across America. Number one, I don't know how many thousands of people was there, but we're running Steve. It's a run to the vice mayor. We were standing there in line, it was like.
I knew most of you were there, so it was just funny, yeah.
Which I think Best Mom moved it, you all were done lying. But to me, I was like, well, but it was a very humbling experience for me. And I think it was for a lot of people, and I think, I talked to some people when it was up there, some of my friends and stuff, and they were over in areas where there was new, young women that was laying on the brakes crying and stuff, and it brings things a little bit, touch of reality. I think the one thing that I took away from it, I didn't realize that they did it all across America. And in my mind, when I walked away, Tanger and Laborers on their veterans grave, why can't we? So that's something moving forward that I would probably be thinking about. I think 2018 was a good year for Cape Charles. I think this will be the last time we will all get together before 2019. So you all might need to drop it in the crowd pot. So thank you for a wonderful half year for 3 of us. So, I think 2019 is going to be much better. On the Historic Review Board, again, I want to say that I do believe the right decision was made tonight, even though I don't necessarily, I think there needs to be more guidance, but I'm not sure. I don't think we need to not back our boards and commissions, especially the ones that does it all the time. I don't, as far as reviewing this, but I think there does need to be some sort of guidelines, maybe some strict regular changes, maybe it's not. But you guys should probably come up with a set of guidelines. If you think so, if you think it's guidelines are fine, we'll continue forward. Larry, thank you for all you've done this year. And I can't wait for the next 5 years. It'll be awesome. Wait out.
You know he had to throw it out there.
It's in the minutes.
Smithy, I forgot to say one thing, I'm sorry.
How many minutes do you need, Tammy?
I just wanted to say that the cookie trail, we had over 400 people participate, and we collected 1,000 pounds of food for the Cape Charles Food Bank. I just want to say, the timing was perfect. Jen and team
awesome.
delivered it all right across, and people picked up on Wednesday. It was really good. Sorry, I forgot that.
No, that's okay. And on the Festive Fridays, they've been very nice. The only thing that I've noticed is the shops. It's on the south side of the street is not getting the attention that the shops is getting on the north side of the street. But other than that, it'll come, I believe, once the other shops get on the south side. I think.
Yeah. And they're trying to be encouraged to host events, and Zest is hosting one tomorrow night. Because that helps. If
Yeah.
you set up an event and you kind of participate in getting your listing in.
I think the job at the Business Association in Main Street and all, it's worked, put all, well, a lot of stuff in the kids, so it's really, really good.
I have one more thing too. Since we're all adding one, a moment of silence for Foster, the brown dog, who passed away.
Oh, you are so right.
Yep. That was, yeah. It wasn't a pet, that was a tiny icon.
Our ambassador, Foster, our ambassador.
I don't have anything else. Anybody else have anything else? Tammy, you need 5 more minutes? Announcements, December 24th, 25th, town office is closed. My office hours will continue as normal for me. Dropping in the crab pot, it was advertised, and brochures and stuff that it was in the park. It's actually going to be on Mason Avenue. The town offices will be closed December 31st, January 1st. Town council work session January 3rd. I do have that something. I'm not going to be here for this. The 17th is the regular meeting. Vice Mayor Bennett and Councilwoman Barron, Tammy.
Chris and I got there.
Not be here, the other 4 of you be here the 17th. If we can, prove like not, we have to do, we got I'm here 17th, I'm not here the 3rd, so you.
Okay.
Town council regular meeting, 6:30 to 17th. Town office is closed for Lee Jackson Day on the 18th January. Town office is closed Martin Luther King Jr. Day on January the 21st. VML legislative days on January 24th. And town council strategic planning session, January the 26th. That takes us up through January, I think. Can I get a motion to adjourn?